Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.
Hi, it's Rita at Travel Nurse Channel. Today is Tuesday, and we're well into January. It's the 19th. It's the day before inauguration of our next president. It's another unusual political scene here, but oh, let me get my comments going. Yeah. Just as 2020 was unusual, so begins 2021. I actually don't have a topic. I'm not going to talk about ICU nurses or travel contracts or, you know, some of the things, rates are still pretty high. The need is still there because probably 1/3 of our hospitals are filled with COVID patients. So that's going on. I thought I'd just do this open mic thing that, you know, radio hosts and comedy clubs and so forth. I've heard open mic here and there, and I thought, you know, I'm always talking about things that interest me, things that I think will interest you. So I do want to make this available to all the travelers out there, all the recruiters out there, all those who employ travel healthcare workers to check in if you can, if it's convenient. If it's not, you can catch us on Facebook. This is live on Facebook on Tuesdays, Travel Nurse Channel. It's going to be archived on Facebook and YouTube. And so anytime you want to comment, please do. If you can do it while we're live, great. I can respond right away. And then we can actually chat. We can video chat. I can easily add you into the program. Or you can leave me messages on Facebook or via email, Rita, R-I-T-A, at travelnursechannel.com. Or you can call me anytime. Not while I'm live. I can't take the call while I'm live, but any other time you can call me or leave a message at 800-737-6518. So there you go. I don't have a special topic for today, but we are the Travel Nurse Channel, and we do focus on all things that interest travelers, where they're going. I see so much chatter going on there on the internet, on our Facebook. We have a lot of followers. Thank you for following Travel Nurse Channel. Please tune in. Please let me know what you're thinking. But I see a lot of communication out there, which is fabulous, about, hey, I'm headed to wherever you're headed to, and how's it go? You know, any tips? You know, any special places I should see? Any information on those units? That's great stuff, especially for the newer travelers, to get a little heads up, a little information from their colleagues. I am chilly this morning. You can see that little radiator. It's a portable radiator. Instead of warming up the whole house, I just brought it in here, but it's not warming me up yet. Oh, it is warming up. Okay. I should just lay it down by my feet. So I'm not hearing from anybody. I think I have my comment line open. So I'll start with something random. My niece, my dear niece, is going to have a baby in a month or so. She wants more stories from my mom. My mom is 91. She's the senior in our family. the matriarch, and we all love her and we admire her. She's been an amazing woman over the last 9 years, post-stroke, paralyzed on one side of her body, but still thinking, still smiling and managing through COVID. She's been very, very isolated. The latest is she's going to get a pet bird. Anyway, so my niece wants to know more of my mother's story. And so she's been sending me questions, and I've been trying, haven't figured out a good way to do it yet, to phone record my mom. I've tried a few apps, none of them are quite right. Her stories. And so some of the questions are really random, like, how did you get your first job? You know, or what were your grandparents like? And sort of delving into just the life you've lived to let other people know. So until I hear from somebody, I'm thinking I'll take off on that, on kind of a story book. And then I guess I can talk about myself, and I can talk about others I know and how they got their starts. So before I got my first job, before I realized or thought about what I would do, I had a very, very good time being a kid. School was kind of easy for me. I had an older sister, so she was sort of the surrogate parent. Gosh, yeah, we're still alive. And 2 younger brothers. I lost my sister in 2018. And very suddenly, it was very, very, very tragic. And she perforated ulcer from disease that was missed. And it was so, so sad. But anyway, she deserved to go quickly. She was a great gal, super generous, one of the most, a natural leader and one of the more generous people you'd ever want to meet. So, so we won't dwell there. But anyway, so I had 2 younger brothers who I got to play with a lot because I didn't tell them what to do, not that they would listen to me. My sister was strong in spirit and strong physically as well. Anyway, so so I had a great childhood. I played a lot. I enjoyed being a little kid. I enjoyed school, and you know, just playing in the neighborhood, felt safe. You know, it's a pretty dysfunctional dad, but you know, I felt loved and all that, and had fun while I was in high school, and didn't really think too hard about my next steps. We went to private Catholic schools, and there wasn't a whole lot of what is it, counseling, career counseling, that didn't exist with the nuns too much. They just wanted good grades, you know, and everybody learns at their own capacity. I understand now, you know, are you visual learners? Are you auditory learners? Are you hands-on learners? And anyway, or, you know, a combo. Most of us are a combo. And I just thought, oh, I'll figure it out. And all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're a senior, and I hadn't quite figured it out. I only knew what I didn't want to do. And so I planned to make some money. So I took that first year after high school and just worked full-time and part-time. And I worked in a big department store, and I earned money. I worked waiting tables. I just had many, many jobs and saved so I could travel. But before I left, so I worked for about a year solid after high school. I mean, I worked all through high school because we were, you know, very middle, maybe lower middle class growing up, and decided I would travel. But before I left to travel, I signed up for nursing school. Why nursing school? Well, when I was a little kid, and my mom introduced us to the library and to books very, very young, probably before we could walk. And then when we could walk, we would go to the library and take out as many books as we could, 7 or 10, whatever they let us take out. And one of my favorite books was a golden book about Nurse Nancy. And she was a little kid, and the boys were always playing and not including her. So she played with her dolls, and she set up a hospital, and she nursed the dolls until one day, one of her brother's friends, or her brother, somebody, got injured, and she came to the rescue with a little red wagon and her little nursing kit, and, you know, put ice on their head and a bandage on their knee, whatever. Anyway, I love that story, and I remember that story. And since I didn't have any other ideas about being a teacher or a professor, there didn't seem to be that many options in the 60s and 70s when I was growing up. What year did I graduate high school? 68, ages ago, 1968. Graduated nursing school in grade school in 68, high school in 72, nursing school in 77, I believe. And anyway, I signed up, I enrolled in nursing school, and I was lucky back in those days. There wasn't really a wait list or anything. So as soon as I came back from traveling, traveled all summer, did it on the cheap, and went to nursing school in September of 77. No, I graduated in 77. So September of 73 or 4? 73, I think. At any rate, I chose nursing because I liked it, but I chose it because I really didn't have any better ideas. And as it turns out, it's so cold, my nose is running. I really can't complain. I'm in Southern California. You know, we think 55 is cold. Okay, I'm going to wash my hands because you saw me touch my face and my nose and my tissue. Wash my hands. Anyway, so how did I get my first job? That was the big lead up to how did I get my first job. And I will leave all the deli jobs and meat wrapping jobs and babysitting jobs and table waiting jobs and soda jerk jobs. I did many, many jobs. How did I get my first nursing job? So how I got my first nursing job. Hey, jump in anytime. It's open mic, so I'm just blah, blah, blah. So I was reaching the end of my education. I had taken my boards, and I believe my license had just come in the mail. It was very exciting. I was perusing every nursing journal and magazine. My friends and I that I went to school with and went to other schools, we were all talking about what we do. I was looking at jobs overseas. I was like, oh, I could travel to the Middle East. I was looking at the Middle East. It looked so exotic at the time. Little did I know how much unrest and so forth that I would never choose that today. Although I do know nurses and teachers and so forth that have traveled to Dubai and to other parts, Saudi Arabia and stuff, and done great work and been taken care of safely in those foreign countries. So I just didn't know. I didn't know. And then a really good friend of mine, she's been a guest on the show, Mary, also an RN, and she said they're hiring at this dialysis center in Queens, and it was called Queens Kidney Dialysis Center, I believe, and they were hiring a lot of nurses. And up until that point, there were a lot of technicians taking care of dialysis patients, and they needed more nurses. I guess the criteria or the protocol for the patient care was had been, you know, a doctor and a nurse to supervise, and then technicians to do the hands-on care, which doesn't really seem like a bad idea, but it was a huge center. They dialyzed, I want to say, like 75 patients a day or something. So I went and applied there, and that was my first job. And it was really a big eye-opener and lesson for me. I mean, I knew about the anatomy of the kidneys. I knew of some of the diseases of the kidneys, but I didn't know the practical and technical and the scope of what it would be like to have kidney failure and need kidney dialysis. And it was hemodialysis. So, so it was my first hands-on practicing with patients' fistulas and accesses that they had, and taking care of young adults to almost elderly adults and all manner of patients. So that was my first job. It was because somebody knew about a job, knew they were hiring and training, and I was intrigued by something that I had limited to moderate information about, let alone experience. So they did train. There was a trio of nurses at that kidney center. Oh no, I thought somebody was checking in from a browser. It's just an advertisement. So much advertisement online lately, right? Anyway, so I became a dialysis nurse. So that was my first job. They hired me, thank goodness. I had decent grades. I wasn't top of the class, but I learned so much, so much. They gave us a chance to be charged. They would rotate who was in charge. We had a strong leader, and we dialyzed, oh my goodness, I would say 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, almost 70 to 90 patients a day, every day of the week. It was amazing. So I met a huge, broad spectrum of patients, from low income to professional to married couples to patients with mental illness. We had, I think, at least 2 patients that were schizophrenic. We had, it was New York, so multicultural, you know, barely speaking English, from Dominican Republic or Russia to, you just name it. I think we probably even had, you know, a drug kingpin in there. We just had an assortment of patients. We had 2 physicians. And what happens with, those patients, for the most part, were long-term kidney failure, chronic, so they had chronic kidney failure, so they needed dialysis minimally, most of them minimally, 3 times a week for 3 hours, many of them 3 times a week for 4 hours, some of them 4.5 hours. It was an amazing first job. My leaders, we had an educational leader, we had a clinical leader, and then we had an administrative leader. Oh man, she was hilarious. Her favorite word for frustration was, oh, balls. She said that all the time in class or whatever. Kind of cracked me up. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend going there. But she was bright and informed, and she was running a huge place. The doctors, we had at least 3. We must have had more. So there's a main doctor that set it up. Anyway, it was fascinating. I was happy to have that opportunity, and it led to many more things. So I did that chronic dialysis for a couple of years. Then in that time, I got engaged, got married, had my first child. I wound up doing dialysis in other facilities closer to home than I did. I went from dialysis to ICU. I think that's what I did. And then, see, touching my face again. Where's that hand sanitizer? Well, get the hair out of my face. Okay, I want you to see all this gray. You will be seeing more. I've decided no more coloring the hair. The hairs, the limited amount of hairs that I have, are turning quite gray. So I've decided, since the lawns are closed here in Southern California, I'm not going to do any more home coloring. you will see me getting grayer and grayer by the week. So I'm sorry, it won't be pretty, but it's going to be, it is what it is. I knew a nurse, another nurse named Rita that I worked with. And I did work quite some time, over a year, maybe more, in rehab, a couple of years in rehab. And I worked with another nurse, Rita, who was like prematurely great, beautiful, pretty lady, energetic lady. And she eventually went from rehab to like a discharge planner or something like that for rehab patients. And her gray hair was so pretty. So let's hope I can be. It was just darling. And it was real silvery gray. I have a feeling, I'm going to see a lot of white up front and then more gray back there. We'll see. Anyway, open mics. Anybody have any comments? Any questions? Any concerns? No particular topic. I just, it's like open story time. We are the Travel Nurse Channel. We're a home away from home for all things travel, for travelers, for those who hire travelers, for those who want to be travelers. We're here every Tuesday, and we talk about things like rates that are going on, dilemmas that may come up. We just have had many topics, and today I just decided to do open mics. So if you have anything you'd like to talk about, we could talk about it. So I'm just trying to not always dictate the topic. Leave it up to those out there. So I think I'll just kind of go with some of these story topics that my niece is wanting to know more of my mother's story. You know, what happens when I think friends and relatives get together, the fun stories, the stories that are on your mind come up and get repeated. And a lot of things, unless somebody sparks an interest or asks that critical question, you don't get to. So, for example, let's see, what were your parents like? How did your parents influence you? Did they have an influence on your career? Do you come from a family of caregivers or medical personnel? Did your family doctor as a child, or the care you received? Did any of that influence you? Things to ponder. Things to ponder. My parents were the children of immigrants. My mom is actually a naturalized citizen. Her parents had 5 children and migrated to the United States with the 3 eldest, and left my mother and her brother. He was about 2.5, and she was 6 months. And they got left with the grandparents, and 2 teenage maiden aunts were each responsible for them. And the parents migrated with the 3 older school-age children, 2 boys and a girl, to New York from Cuba. And so my mom, by the time they came back to get her, almost 6 years later, she was school age, and so was her brother. And it was devastating for her to leave her home in Cuba with this woman who she barely knew. Tough times, right? That was in the 1930s. She kept running away from her mother, and they were traveling by boat. No place to go but overboard. My mother was not a swimmer or a strong swimmer. Anyway, so she started her life in the States as an immigrant, and did not quite complete college, high school. She went to beauty school and became a beautician, a pretty good beautician actually, and met my father through some friends, maybe at a dance club or something like that. And my dad was the child, the middle child, two brothers, so one of three boys, was the child of immigrants. Let's back up. My mom was an immigrant. Her parents were, her mother was a Milanist, and her father was in the shipbuilding business. His family was in the shipbuilding business, so they were a pretty successful family. But when they came to the States, I don't know if her mother started as a Milanist. With 5 kids, she was probably a homemaker. But when they came to the States, her dad, with his brothers, started working in the hotels as waiters and so forth in the hotels, in the, not the Hilton, oh, I can't remember the names. Oops, I moved my camera. Sorry, folks. The Waldorf Astoria. They worked in the Waldorf Astoria. So that was my mom's dad, and her mother was a Milanist, so that was somebody making hats, which aren't a big deal now. Pretty much everybody owns a baseball cap, but not too many beautiful hats. So, but everybody back in the day, in the early 1900s and so forth, and still in some of our schools and so forth, you have home ec. My daughter didn't seem to do home ec, but her husband, he can cook and sew and all of that, and does. So he took advantage of home ec. Anyway, back in the day, you learned at home. Everybody sewed and knitted and crocheted and so forth, and seamstress, and most of the women did that. My mom taught my sister and I how to sew, but we didn't take it anywhere. We learned it, but we didn't really use it. I did more mending until I had small children, and found it very satisfying to make something for them homemade because they appreciated it so much. But I don't do a lot of it. Excuse me. Getting dry. So we're talking about anything and everything. It's open mics. I haven't heard from anybody, so I'm thinking up random questions. And the question I asked, putting out there is, what did your parents do and how did it influence you? So I'm kind of backtracking a couple of generations. My parents were either immigrants. My mom was. She's a naturalized citizen now. And my dad was the child of an immigrant. And their parents just were working class people. Whether they were in their own country, and on my mom's side, her father was a shipbuilder from a shipbuilding family, pretty successful, brought shipbuilding from Spain to Cuba. So my mother was born in Cuba. And when her parents migrated, my mother was left behind with her kid brother because they weren't school age yet. My mother was only 6 months old. So her mom worked as a Milanist making hats, and her dad worked as a service person in the Waldorf Astoria, one of the finer hotels in New York City. And my dad's parents were farmers in Italy. So I have that Latin from Spain and Cuba, and then from Italy. So a lot of European Latin background. My dad's parents were farmers, and when they came to the States, my grandmother worked as a laundress, cleaning and folding and ironing, and she also was pretty terrific seamstress. And my grandpa, my dad's side, was like a steam fitter. He helped build some of the skyrise buildings in New York. And he was missing the tip of one of his pinkies. And I think that may have been a work injury. I don't really know. I don't know who to ask. wonder if my brothers know about that. Anyway, so then my parents were sent to school. Of course, my dad was a whiz at math. I don't know if his grades were good, but I know he was, quick thinking and easy learner. What he did after high school was he got a job with the Postal Service, and that led to various different jobs within the U.S. Postal Service. My mom didn't finish high school for whatever reason. I don't know. She didn't do well, but she came here at 6 as an immigrant speaking only Spanish and Castilian Spanish in New York, and got thrown into the New York City school system and had kind of a dyslexia issue. Whether she would have had that had she stayed in her own country with her own language, I don't know. But she managed, but without much help from either her parents, who were working all the time, her siblings, who teased her a lot. She had 3 older brothers and an older sister. And she just muddled through and struggled through. Probably that's why she quit high school early. But she went to beauty school and found a profession that appealed to her and that she was very, very good at. And she did that. So how do they influence us? Well, number one, I had an older sister and 2 younger brothers. They encouraged us to do well in school and to be nice and kind. And so we did our best to do well in school and be nice and kind. We fought like cats and dogs, but I love my siblings very much. And my mom actually wanted us all to get college educated and have good careers, but we didn't have the means. So she always suggested, which all of her brothers did, is to join the service. So she was encouraging all of us, my sister included, and myself included, and my brothers, that it would be a good idea to join the service. Because if you don't know someone, in other words, if you don't know someone of influence, wherever, at a law firm, in politics, in city government, if you don't know someone, join the service. It's a step up, a hand up, and it would help you with your education. So those were some of the ideas my mom gave us. My dad was a little bit more severe and rigid, and probably not as stable as a human adult could be. So he had the iron hand, and you just needed to do well. It didn't matter how well you did. I'd bring home A's. He'd mention someone else that got an A+. So he was very hard to please. And they just didn't give us career goals. They just wanted us to do well. And we were out there trying to figure it out. And so my brothers and sister, everybody got educated. Everybody got married. My brothers wound up being pretty successful at business. They both got business degrees, I believe. And my sister, she actually was very successful at business with her husband after so many years. But she studied to be, I think, a legal secretary. But she was actually a pretty great writer. So when she had the opportunity, after the kids were grown and all that, she went back to school to do some creative writing, and I'm not sure where she would have gone with that, but she ran a really successful business. And interesting. So we all did business, because in my nursing career at one point, I started a nursing agency. So we all wound up doing a business route. And I don't know if that was influenced by, having immigrant parents or, most jobs are a good living, right? Unless you're a super high level, a lawyer, a judge, a doctor, a surgeon, super fantastic at real estate or whatever, you're going to make a living. So nurses can make a good living at any level, LVN, RN, and so forth. But depending on where you live, you can't always really get ahead. So a lot of professional people that I know, not a lot, some, many, whatever, it varies, do something else. So I know nurses that I first met in California dabbled in a little real estate. Teachers that I met in California dabbled a little bit in real estate. Some nurses I know became, went into nurse agency work. So they started agencies, which I did at one point. So yeah, if you want to make $1 million, you have to be creative, you have to take chances. But you can make a really good living in healthcare. There's always overtime, there's always higher education, there's administrative side of many of the things that we do. There's leadership positions. So it's very, very rewarding. I have loved my nursing career, and I'm so grateful that without a lot of guidance counseling for career, that I was able to make a decision that worked out well, suited me, my skills, and my temperament as well as it did. Okay, folks, it's Open Mics Tuesday, open mic, and if you're watching us live, you can find us on Facebook and make a comment, and ask a question, whatever. Let's see. I'm thinking, if I'm not hearing from anybody, I'm just kind of coming up with random questions that may kind of relate to where you are today. I've covered many topics over the last couple of years. Talked about rates, talk about travel jobs, talk about what it takes to be a traveler. We've talked about the big need in ICUs right now due to COVID. We've talked about the concerns, the PTS, post-traumatic stress syndromes that are going on with our caregivers, because they are just so taxed, so overworked, so understaffed in many cases, and so devastated by the severity of the criticalness of these COVID patients. So we've talked about a lot of these subjects, and I thought, let's just break away and talk about some random things, like maybe what was one of your favorite jobs? What was one of your funniest jobs? What was, who influenced you? What influenced you? What were your parents like? What were your bosses like? Just some random stuff, I wish I could hear from some of you. You're probably all too busy. So I'm cold. I've got a radiator here. It's warming up, but it's not warming me up. I'm sorry, my nose is running. What else can we talk about? Oh, my husband mentioned this the other day. He goes, all these people that are tuning into the Travel Nurse channel and signing up on Facebook and so forth, they're mostly female. I'm like, oh no, there's males in there. And then I thought about all the years I ran an agency. The higher percentage of our nurses were female. And we had some amazing and wonderful male RNs. I'm thinking of them right now, and they always tested well. They were always professional. Many of them came through the Navy. They were Navy nurses. They were lieutenants, lieutenant commanders, and wonderful, wonderful nurses. One of the things, so it's changed over the years. Yes, from the time of Florence Nightingale, whenever we got her, I don't remember what decade, what was it, the 1700s? I'm not sure, but we always think of Florence Nightingale as one of the historical nurses, right? And back in the day of Florence Nightingale, we were mopping the floors and wiping up the blood and making the tea and doing it all. Not that we don't do it all, but we are a little bit more focused on the science end of it and the, disease and the caring, the nursing planning and all of that now. It's a little bit, it's changed, thank God. But it's still, we're doing a lot and too much and so forth. And so, but we don't think of it as a male profession. Well, most of those nurses that I employed from the PAs, nurse pracs, specialty nurses, certified nurses, RNs, LVNs, CNAs, all of it, the majority were were female. But over the years, more and more males came to us, many of them through, they were like moonlighting or doing a few extra shifts here and there through the Navy. And that could have been corpsmen working as LVNs or aides. Sorry. Sniffle, sniffle, wash, wash. They were excellent nurses, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why. Because they were, excuse me, too much alcohol. Because they weren't locked in. We're only going to take care of orthopedic patients. We're only going to take care of pediatric patients. They went where their officers told them. So they were working out in the field like urgent care, MASH. They were working with the elderly, with the pediatric, in the clinics, in the ICU, labor and delivery, NICU. So those RNs, those corpsmen, they were multi-talented and very willing to take care of a variety of patients and pretty skillful at all of it. They didn't require a lot of counseling. They were, oh my gosh, they were fabulous, fabulous nurses. And I was privileged to work with some of those Navy nurses. But other male nurses I met along the way chose that career. It's the nursing career has so many doors that open, and if you are really kind of into urgency and so forth, many RNs go into the ER. I know another RN who suffered a trauma themselves at a young age and changed careers and became a nurse, and has done a few things, including pediatrics, but has found a niche in hospice. How wonderful. Many of them did the critical care, cardiothoracic, ER, sort of the high specialty nursing careers. A few NICU, male nurses go into NICU. Excuse me. I think too the change of say 50-50 male female, that's going to take a while, because old school, going way back to Florence Nightingale, was males were doctors and females were nurses. Nursing, nurturing, mothering, etc. seemed to be more of a female position. And nowadays, why can't a man be nurturing? My son-in-law, because my daughter is a student, and they really share their parenting and so forth. And my son-in-law has taken the baby to her pediatric appointments. So not all of them, but they share the load. If my daughter has to be a student that day and he can take time off from his job or whatever, they pinch hit. They're parents, and they're both nurturing parents and loving parents. They do it differently, of course, but of course, of course, it's a career for all. And you find out as you approach a career, as you get educated, there are pieces along the way that really go, oh, this is so fascinating. This is so interesting. I think I'm going to be good at this. Or, why am I doing this? I met a nurse. She'd been at it for a while. I want to say I'd been nursing not quite a half a dozen years, and I had had one child already. It was before I got pregnant with my second child, and I was doing swing float shifts. So I would work with dialysis patients if they needed me all day, or I'd swing into the hospital and work on the floors or the telemetry units, or they would send me to the ICU to dialyze a patient in the ICU. So I had this really pretty well-rounded experience during those years. And I worked with one nurse in the dialysis unit, not as big as the first one I worked in. And she was unhappy with her career. So she was studying bookkeeping, of all things. That would make me so unhappy. But that's what she wanted. She realized dealing with human beings all the time, and caregiving, and I don't know if it was dialysis in particular or nursing in general. Oh, hello from Yosef Salhi. Hello from Morocco with locals, organized tours and trips to Morocco. Oh, well, that's interesting. Do you need nurses? Do you need healthcare workers? Oh, Morocco. I have friends that have traveled to Morocco. I made it as far as the Rock of Gibraltar, but I never made it to Morocco. How wonderful. Nice to see you. I hope you're well and healthy. This is Travel Nurse Channel for nurses that travel and therapists and techs that travel. And it's open mics. So if you want to talk about anything more healthcare related, but anything you're interested in, go ahead, let us know, and we'll talk further about it. So anyway, that nurse found out, I don't know, a couple of years into her career that it wasn't suited to her. And so she started studying bookkeeping. So I hope that, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome anytime too. If you know any nurses, let them know about the Travel Nurse Channel, or any healthcare workers that want to travel. We're here for all of those who travel. And normally we talk about things that are going on in the hospital and things that are going on for the travelers, where the jobs are, what the rates are, what to expect when you first travel and so forth. But today is just open mics. So I'm so glad you checked in, Yosef. And all the way from Morocco. Yeah, so anyway, career choices, how you got there. Were you influenced by your parents or your grandparents or your siblings? Some nurses that I've met along the way come from a whole family of doctors and nurses and healthcare people, so they were influenced by that. Many stories that I've read and so forth are doctors and nurses whose family included that. My aunt was a doctor, my mother was a doctor, my other aunt was a nurse, my sister became a nurse. So that's influential too, because it's around you, right? So for example, families that didn't grow up with pets maybe don't think about having a pet. In my family, it was always, yeah, we love pets. So there have been chickens and bunnies and doggies and birds, and not so much cats because of allergies. But my children all had trips to ranches to ride horses and learn about equestrian, because we're able to do that where we live. Always pushed off owning a horse till they were teenagers because I couldn't afford it. And I thought by that time they're going to make other choices after being exposed to a variety of things. So we never owned a horse. But some families don't. That's not, they either grew up in the city or you know, pets weren't part of the picture. So, what's your favorite topic? What's your favorite story? What's your favorite story? Maybe a clinical story, or maybe during your education. I remember in nursing school, I had some really terrific professors and clinical instructors both, and one or two not so great. One or two that I felt like were always looking over my shoulder, driving me crazy. But maybe they saw something that they felt they needed to watch more closely. You know, sometimes enthusiasm can be a good thing, and I lean towards enthusiasm. And when I think about it now, you know, more rationally and less emotionally, I know this one instructor, I was very inquisitive, I was very enthusiastic, and I was in an, what do you want to say, like an accelerated nursing program. It was a 2.5-year, what do you call it, diploma associate program. And so when we were in the hospital, in the clinical area, we had a lot of guidelines, and I would be like, follow the guidelines, and then if I had extra time, go be nosy about something else. And so she had to reel me in, you know, quite a bit. And I think because of that, she had to keep an extra close eye on me. Anyway, and it seemed to me, I didn't like it. I think I buttoned my shirt wrong. Anyway, I didn't like it. I like independence. I've always liked my independence. And so it seemed like she was one of my tougher teachers. But I understand now. I understand now after gaining some perspective and gaining some maturity that you can't have a new student with limited knowledge wandering around hospitals and units without enough background. And that could include sterile technique, isolation, professionalism, proper communication. You know, if you're in a pediatric ward and you're assigned 2 patients, 4 patients, whatever, that's your focus. You don't go do anything else without permission because you haven't been in the charts, you haven't spoken to the doctors or the nurses in charge, and it's trouble waiting to happen. So I do understand that now. At the time, I thought, why is she always on me? Why is she always on my case? But I think about it now with good reason, I have to say, with good reason. Okay, what else can we talk about? Open mics. Are there lots of travel assignments? Yes. Are there special rates? Yes. There are travel companies that are there just to fill certain urgent needs. They may not be the average 13-week assignments, the 90 days, but they may have some very special rates and incentives because they need to cover a certain amount of days or weeks. And so if that's something you can do with your current travel or your current staff position, there's a way to earn some extra cash that route. Let's see. Oh, touching my face again. It's ongoing. Let's see. Oh, I'm finally warming up from that little portable radiator. Yeah, so the answer to all of that and the above is yes. What about this? Do you have concerns about the COVID pandemic, the new strains that are coming out? I think we're less concerned now, 11 months or so, almost 11 months down the road, because officially most of us found out about the COVID pandemic here in the States in March. There was some talk in January. We weren't getting a whole picture. Maybe our leaders weren't getting the whole picture. But certainly by the end of February, the beginning of March, we were aware. And as healthcare professionals, we've always been aware of communicable diseases and contagious diseases, etc. And so we have special practices for that. As this one came along, and as it seemed like there for a while, way back in March and April, and even through probably to June or July, we were getting new information every day. It varied. It was terrible for our seniors in senior centers and skilled nursing. We lost many, many patients because of the mixed information. And different regulations occur in skilled nursing facilities versus acute hospitals. But I spent a lot of my career in the clinical setting, and the bulk of that in acute care hospitals, and our protocols for isolating patients and for really, really good aseptic technique protected us. They protected us when we were exposed to things we didn't know, like things like AIDS, let me talk about some other things, hepatitis. We've had videos specifically on communicable diseases and how to protect oneself. So we followed those guidelines for many, many years before we had a pandemic. Well, if you practice like that, if you know when it's a bloodborne pathogen and it's transmitted by droplets, or it's transmitted by blood, or it's transmitted, oral fecal, you practice to protect yourself and your patients. So doing so for COVID was just ramping it up, using the N95s instead of just a paper mask, more conscientious hand washing for 2.5 minutes, isolating the COVID patients from the regular population of patients. It took a while to get there, but the vast, vast majority of my colleagues, friends, professional persons in healthcare that I know and don't know, the vast majority of them have not contracted COVID. Some of them did for whatever reasons, and maybe it occurred in their household. Maybe it didn't happen in the clinical setting. But then they followed additional protocols on how to keep the rest of the staff safe. They're immediately removed. They sought treatment and received treatment, and then they had isolation periods. So, open mics didn't seem to reach a lot of people. But if you catch this video after the fact, so we're live now on Tuesday, the 19th of January, the day after Martin Luther King holiday. It's open mics. If you're interested, if there's something you've been thinking about, you wanted to talk about, or you have concerns about, or we haven't touched that subject yet, from a travel perspective, from a healthcare perspective, from a nursing perspective, you can comment on Facebook, on the Travel Nurse Channel anytime. You can email me, Travel Nurse Channel, Rita@travelnursechannel.com anytime, and I can bring up in one of our future videos. So I'm happy to do that. If you'd like to join me in a chat live, we can arrange that. If you can't do it on a Tuesday between 10 and 11 Pacific Standard Time, we can do it another time. So all of these options are open, and I'd love to hear from you. And I think I'm going to close it up. Yeah, we've kind of reached our deadline. We usually chat for about an hour, discuss things for about an hour, and we're closed in on that hour. So thanks for tuning in. Tune in again. These videos are archived, so they all usually have titles so that you can maybe find what really interests you. And thank you, Yosef, for tuning in from Morocco with Locals. And it's tours and trips in Morocco. That's interesting. Hopefully when people are traveling more safely again, they'll remember about Yosef's Morocco with Locals. I'll remember. Morocco should be on my list. I have a friend that took her whole family to Morocco not too long ago, a couple of years ago, and they loved it. She's multilingual, so she has a doctorate after her name. She's a doctor of music, my friend Luann. Okay, folks, great seeing you. It's Rita at the Travel Nurse Channel. We're here for all things about healthcare, travelers, nurses, healthcare workers, doctors, recruiters, all companies that are interested in healthcare travelers. You should be checking in with us. We care about you, and we want to be your home away from home while you're out there traveling. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to sign off with our darling little commercial. I do hear there's another commercial in the works, but for the time being, this one's pretty cute. I hope you enjoy it. Bye. Where'd she go? Let's see. There she is. Bye-bye.
Travel nursing can bring you to places you've never been before. Tell us your story.